Do you want to start using AI to learn coding or build projects but aren't sure how it really works? Or maybe you feel like you're not using it the right way. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use ChatGPT as a .NET developer, from getting started as a beginner to building 3 full-stack projects in ASP.NET Core MVC. I'll walk you through each step, showing you how to use it effectively for various purposes. By the end of this video, you'll know how to make learning .NET development easier if you're a beginner, and how to improve and simplify your development process if you've been coding for a while. Well, let's get started. In this video, we will start by exploring how you can get a learning path to learn to code from ChatGPT. Then we will see how we can dive into each topic in detail. Project building is also an important aspect, and we will explore how we can get ideas from ChatGPT and see how it helps us solve them. And of course, we'll see how ChatGPT can benefit us while coding and for what purposes it can be used to assist us. So let's get started. Just as a quick introduction, ChatGPT is an AI language model developed by OpenAI that generates human-like text based on the input it receives. It can understand and generate text in a variety of languages and is trained on a diverse range of internet text to provide versatile and contextually relevant responses. We will start by asking ChatGPT to provide us with a roadmap that we need to follow so that we know what we need to learn and where to start. The more specific we are, the more accurate the response will be. Therefore, I will ask it to give me the roadmap for a C# developer. You can do the same for any language you prefer or for whatever discipline you are learning. So I'm just writing, give me the roadmap of a C# developer. And it gives us a list of all the topics we need to learn. I would say this is a pretty solid and comprehensive learning path. However, for the roadmap alone, I would recommend getting it from an actual person because it is usually clearer and more concise. I have also created a video about this topic and the roadmap you need to follow as a developer, and I will link it below. When I personally started programming, I made the mistake of learning languages such as C++, Java, and trying C# one after the other. Basically, I was learning languages that did the same thing, so the roadmap we get here from ChatGPT is still very decent. After getting what we need to learn, we can ask it to give us the resources we need and the timeline to learn them. Since the chatbot remembers our previous interactions, it will offer us a timeline and resources for each topic. So about the timeline that we get here, I would say it is approximately correct. Even though this depends on you, it depends on how much time you spend learning. And we see here that it gives us as resources many books, courses, or websites as well. You can also choose YouTube series as a learning resource based on what suits you best. Whether you learn better through videos or by reading books and written information, this is up to you. Up until this point, we know what we need to learn and have the necessary resources, so we can ask ChatGPT for more specific guidance on each topic. Firstly, I will ask it to provide me with the fundamental topics of C#. Now that we have a more specific list of topics, we can ask ChatGPT about each one individually. For example, we can request an explanation of methods in C#. Here we receive high-quality information, including explanations of methods, their syntax, key concepts related to methods, and examples. I would advise you to test each example in your code editor and experiment with them, and even make some changes. If you want to challenge yourself further, you can ask ChatGPT to provide exercises for each topic. Try solving them independently first, and then you can either request the solution from ChatGPT or input your solution here to check its correctness. One of the best parts of ChatGPT is that it can give you project ideas and also build them for you. Now, let's see what projects it suggests first. Let's start by typing, I want some C# project ideas. We can see a list of different projects here. Now let's ask it to provide us with the code for one of them. For example, let's request the code for a to-do list app. And here it is. It seems functional, but let me test it out. I will go to Visual Studio. Since this is a console application, I'm creating a console app. I'm choosing this template. I will leave everything as it is. Next, the name of the project and the location of it. While the project loads, I'm just gonna copy the code and we're gonna paste it then in the program.cs file. Now we can just run the project and we can confirm its functionality just by interacting with the console. You can test it out yourself, but this actually really works. Now, after we have completed our learning and projects, let's explore some additional ways you can use ChatGPT while coding. For example, we can ask it to write a specific method or algorithm to solve a particular problem. For instance, write me a C# method to calculate all the prime numbers smaller than 100. Just in case you're not familiar, prime numbers are whole numbers that can only be divided by 1 or the number itself. Typically, problems like these are studied when learning algorithms, but here we have ChatGPT that gives us the solution for it. We can see that this problem is solved with more than one method because they are needed actually. And we can copy one of them and ask ChatGPT to explain it to us. For instance, we can request explain these lines of code and paste the code. This is like having an online tutor available at all times, which is quite remarkable in my opinion. We see that it explains to us the code that we entered there. Moreover, when encountering issues while coding, we can ask ChatGPT to identify why a piece of code isn't working. Let me illustrate this with a small portion of the code we had above. I'll intentionally just remove like a letter there and then ask ChatGPT why the code isn't functioning. And it's really amazing how quickly it detects the issue. So this is how I would suggest going about learning to code using ChatGPT. Not only is it effective in teaching you, but it's also a very helpful tool that boosts your productivity and assists you during your work.
I want to share a free resource that I know will help you as a developer. It's my free roadmap to learning .NET and C# development. This roadmap breaks down all the essential technologies and topics you need to focus on so you can avoid wasting time on the wrong things. Whether you're an absolute beginner or already coding but unsure what to learn next, this guide gives you clear steps to follow. Again, it's completely free. Take a second, click the link in the description or go to .NETdeveloperroadmap.com and grab your copy now.
Have you ever wondered if you could build a full stack application from scratch using AI? In this video, I'll show you exactly how to do that step by step in ASP.NET Core MVC using ChatGPT. We'll create a goal tracking app, go over the prompts you should give ChatGPT, evaluate the accuracy of its responses, and make any necessary adjustments along the way. I have opened up ChatGPT here, and the number one fundamental you need to know when working with ChatGPT is that the more specific your request is, the more accurate the response from ChatGPT will also be. So in our case, when we want to get an application from ChatGPT, we want to be specific about the main parts or the main characteristics that define our project. So in our case here, I'm going to need to specify the project type and the framework, what the application will do, and also since we are building an MVC application, the base of our application is going to be the model class, which I'm going to need to specify since that determines mainly how the application will look like. So let me write here, provide me with a ASP.NET Core MVC project for a goal tracking app. The model class will be named goal and it will have these properties. So ID, name, target, progress, and progress percentage, which will calculate
actual progress. Okay, the app should be a simple CRUD app, and in the index view page you should display the progress with the progress bar. Use Bootstrap only. I'm specifying Bootstrap here for the display so that it doesn't get complicated with any library or with CSS, let's say. So that's the request we're giving ChatGPT, and let's see what it gives us back. So it starts with setting up the project, installing the Entity Framework Core package, defining the model here, which we're gonna look in a bit, and then configuring the context, configuring the connection string in our app settings.json file, configuring the service for the context here, and then it creates the goals controller with the CRUD operations for us. This is still processing. And then it should display to us here how the progress bar will look like. Let's give it a few seconds more to finish. It's giving us the other view models as well. And then in the end, it tells us to run the migrations, update the database, so the changes will be saved in our database. So I would say the response is pretty good. So it tells us how to set up the project firstly, how the functionality will look, all the controllers, methods, and the view pages, and then how to configure the database. Let's start from the top, and we will see along the way what things we'll take as they are and what we will tweak a bit during the way. So let me go to Visual Studio, create a new project. Select here an MVC web app template, click on next. I'll name the project like goal web app. Click on next. So I'm going to select .NET 8 here and click on create and wait for Visual Studio to create our project. Okay, the project is loaded. The first thing we're going to need to do is go to the models folder and add a class for our goals model. So add class goal.cs and wait for it to load. And I'm going to ChatGPT again to get the model here. I'm just gonna copy this here, the properties, paste them here. So the data annotations library should be imported on top. Okay, we start with the int_id property, which is necessary. Then we have the name property set as required, and it has like an initial empty value. Here we have then our two other properties, the target and the progress property, which are given here as an integer. And they have a data annotation here specifying for both the target and the progress property that these values should be at least 0, and they can have up to the maximal value that an integer can have, which basically means that they both should be a positive numbers and they cannot be negative integers. And the last property that we have here, as you can see, has this not mapped data annotation, which means that this property is not going to be stored in our database, but we will use this only so that we will display this information in our view pages. This is the meaning of the not mapped data annotation basically. And here we see that the progress is divided by the target. It's turned into a double and then multiplied by 100. And we see in this whole expression here that firstly is a check is being done if the target is equal to null. So this is the first thing I'm going to do a bit differently from ChatGPT, so that for us to avoid this check here, this long check, I'm just going to put the range of the target from 1 so that the target is never less than 1. And I'm going to remove this part here. as we saw in the response here, we need to set up the database by configuring the context, the app settings.json file with the connection string, and the service in our program.cs file. What I'm going to do is when we use a scaffolder for the controller, it has the option to create itself the context and also write the service in the program.cs file, which we will just see right now. So if you click on the controller, click on add, click on controller, MVC controller with views using entity framework. Click on add. Here we specify the model, which was the goal. And then since I haven't created a context myself, I could do it, but for it to be simpler and faster, I'm just gonna click here on create a context, leave the name as it is, click on add. So the scaffolder will create the context itself. Leave the database provider as SQL Server, the controller name to be calls controller, click on add. Now the scaffolder will create the controller with all of the CRUD action methods that we are going to need, and a view folder with all of these CRUD view pages will also be created. So this is the fast way. If you want to know actually how each of these action methods or the CRUD operations work, I have a video which you should find the link on the card on the screen or in the description, where I explain step by step how the CRUD operations work. As you can see, in the meantime, the goals controller is created with all of these action methods to perform the main CRUD operations. If we go to the data folder here that was created, we see the context where a dbset instance for a goal model is created. In app settings.json, we have a connection string specified, but we are going to need to create a database instance to connect it with our project and then substitute the value of its connection string with what we have here. In program.cs file, the service to add the context is also added by this process. So now we need to connect our project with the database. How we can do that? Firstly, we need to go to the view panel here. Click on Server Explorer and we'll create a database for our project. Click with the right of the mouse here on top. Create new SQL Server database. I'm gonna need to open SQL Server Management Studio to get the server name in this case. Okay, let me copy this. Click on Connect here and paste it here. I'm gonna need to specify here to encryption to set it to false. Trust server certificate. This just means that we're not specifying a password to connect our project with the database. Let's give it a name like goal app data or something. The database instance is being created on our SQL server, and here on the properties window we should see the connection string. The connection string is just the physical location of the database that we just created, and so that the project knows where this is, we need to specify this connection string in the app settings.json file. Okay, we have our connection string here specified. Everything else is set up correctly. Now let me just run the project and then we need to migrate all of these changes to the database. Okay, build succeeded, the app loaded here. I'm just gonna go to Package Manager console to add all of the changes that we made to our database. So I'm writing here the command add migration and the name of the migration, which is going to be initial migration. You can give it a name of your choice here. The migration is just a class, a C# class that represents how our database schema will look like. So any changes to everything related to the database, like our model that we did, there will be reflected here. As you can see in this class, we are specifying that a table will be created in our database named goal with the columns, or which are the properties that we specified with their specific specifications here. This is the schema that our database will take, and we just need to write the last comment here, update database. Hit on enter. and this should apply these changes to our database. Basically, our database, if we open it up now, will have one table named goal with these columns. Okay, so now let me just run the project again. And firstly, since we have set up our project, the controller with the action method is set up with the view pages as well. If we see here on the right, we have a goals folder with all of these view pages. Let us test if our CRUD operations are working correctly. I'll go /goals, which is the name of the controller. Click on create new. Let's say a goal is like paying the rent, like a monetary goal. The target, let's say it's like $1,000. The progress is like $200. Click on create. We see this stored. The target, did I put the target 100 or 1,000? Let me edit the target and set it to 1,000. Click on save. That's how we see the CRUD operations to work. We can check out the details page as well, and the delete page or the delete operation, which both should work. And now that we have set up our project, our full stack project, we are going to take care of the representation of the goal here. Let me go back and see what chat gave us for the index view page. It's this step number 6 here. I'm just gonna take it firstly and see if we need to tweak a few things. So go to the views folder, to the goals folder. Inside is the index view page. Enter everything in it. Let's run the program. Let's see how it looks like firstly. Okay, we have an error. Goal web app, the name of the project. The directory, not what chat gave us. Okay, let's check it out one more time and see how things look like. Okay, the representation here is a bit messed up. The first thing I'm gonna ask the chat is to change it a little bit and not display it in a table. I'm gonna make the request here so that the color of the progress bar also gets changed, since in our case here, chat only takes care of the width of the progress bar depending on the progress percentage. So I'm just gonna write here, give me the index page where the progress bar is not displayed in a table, just in a simple div. Also possible for the color of the progress bar to change according to the progress. Use only Bootstrap for the styling. Hit on enter and wait to see what it gives us in this case. Okay, it gives us the code now, not in a table, but the changes are happening in a JavaScript script tag, which I'm also now going to ask the ChatGPT to change for us. So instead of JavaScript tags, handle the styling in Bootstrap. Okay, let's look at the response. This time, this seems like what we were asking for. So depending on the goal.progress percentage property, chat here handles it inside of the class of the div. So if this percentage is less than 30, then we have this red color from Bootstrap. If it's more than, less, or equal to 70, we have another color, which should be like a yellow, and otherwise we have a background.success Bootstrap class, which gives us a green color. And as you can see down below here in the style property, the width of this progress bar will also be adjusted depending on this percentage. Let me just copy this and test it in our application. Just change the directory with the name of the project here. Run the app. Okay, now this is what our application looks like. Okay, the progress, we see this progress bar here. The progress is 20% and it has this red color. It seems like the percentage is not showing up correctly here. So we could actually just use the percentage afterwards, or use a toString method actually to format it correctly. Let me hot reload the app. Now it looks a bit better. So if I try and edit the progress here to, let's say, to 700, which will be 70%, we should see this other color. So the progress bar now has 70% of the space of the whole progress bar. The color changes and we see the percentage here as well. If I make it, I think, how much was it here? Over 75, it should be like, it should be green, and this is also adjusted, the width is adjusted, the color and the percentage is shown here. Using AI to add features to your applications or to make them more complete is an underused approach. Whether you're starting a project from scratch or improving an existing one, this is a method you need to explore. In this video, we'll use ChatGPT to brainstorm feature ideas and implement one of them into an existing ASP.NET Core MVC project. Okay, so here I have opened up a recent project I've done. This is a simple CRUD web application in ASP.NET Core MVC, just a goal tracking web application. Now what we're going to do, I'm just going to go to ChatGPT and we're going to explain the application that we have, its framework, and ask to add some features to it. Since the main functionality of this app are in the index view page, I'm also going to go to our project here and go to the views folder, to the index view folder, and copy what we have here so that I give this to ChatGPT on the prompt as well, just so that ChatGPT is more accurate with its response and it understands our project better. If your project is more complex, you can give multiple files to ChatGPT, because the more specific we are and the more information we give to ChatGPT, the better will the response be according to our needs. So I'm just gonna ask here, ChatGPT, firstly just explain, I have a web application project in ASP.NET Core MVC, a goal tracking web application. Maybe what could form the sentence a bit better, but that is the idea. Give me some feature ideas I can add to my project. This is the main file of the project, the index view page, and here I'm just inputting what we just copied, the index view page, and wait for ChatGPT a few seconds to give us its ideas, the response. Okay, so let's just scroll a bit below, and here we have a list of features ChatGPT is recommending to us. So the first one is goal categories and tags, a description. Basically what this means is this feature allows users to categorize or tag goals, and the implementation is explained here in a couple of sentences. Add a category property to the goal model and provide a drop-down or multi-select input for categories during goal creation/editing. Okay, we have a deadlines and reminders feature we can add, subtasks or milestones. Let's see what would be something simple that we can add to our project. Goal prioritization is actually a very simple and useful one we can add to our goal tracking web application, or at least something I like, since it would be very good to rank our goals depending on the priority that we have. to reach them. So that could be something we could add to it, to add some priorities like high, medium, and low, and to sort these goals, so to say, the goal with the highest priority to come to the top of the page and the rest to be below. We have goal sharing and collaboration, daily, weekly, and monthly reports. So ChatGPT gave us here like 16 feature ideas that we can add. And actually, I would highly recommend you that if you are doing a project, even if you have finished it, if you just give the project to ChatGPT and just ask it what kind of feature I can add to it to make it more complete. Maybe you don't use any of those, but maybe ChatGPT just catches something or shows you something that would very benefit your project. Even if you know how to code it yourself, just to see if you maybe have forgotten something or if something would improve your app, I would recommend to input your code here, and I'm just going to take one of these features and ask ChatGPT to give us the code on how we can do this, and then we will implement this feature in our project. I will take the goal prioritization feature, so let's tell ChatGPT I want to add only the goal prioritization feature to the app. Explain to me the steps on how I can do this. Let's hit on enter and wait a couple of seconds for ChatGPT to give us the response. Okay, let's scroll a bit below. So, okay, ChatGPT gives us the response here separated in steps. So update the goal model, add the priority property to the goal model. And here we see that ChatGPT has written firstly an enum on top of our model with this named constants, high, medium, and low. So if you do not know, enum is this data structure in C# that allows us to write named constants. All of these constants have a hidden integer number underneath, starting from 0, 1, 2, and so on. And this is actually recommended when we want to have constants. The code is more readable and it's also more maintainable. That's the reason why Chat gave us this in this case. And then this priority, we have a property here in the goal model, which is of type goal priority, which is the name of the enum. I hope that's not too complex, but you can ask ChatGPT actually to explain to you what an enum is or what this means. If you want to, that would actually help you as well. The second step is to update the database, to add the migrations to it and update the database. Then we need to add in the create and edit view pages that we have to allow users to select a priority for their goals. The fourth step is to display this in the index view page, the priority, as we see here. And here it actually styles it depending on the priority using Bootstrap. I would use this part later on. Here the fifth step tells us to sort goals by priority. We do this by sorting the goals in our data. When we take the data or the goals from our context in the database, we'll see how this works, but that's actually a cool feature so that we have the most urgent, so to say, goals in the beginning, and then the goals that we want to reach that are not that necessary or urgent for now, they come later on the page. And let's see, the sixth step is to seed the data in the database, which is optional. You have set up the project here. We can perform the CRUD operations and store data in our database just using the create view page here, the create operation. So we do not need to seed the database. So the database has some data in it, but as you can see here as well, this is optional. And then test the application, create a new goal, edit a goal, ensure goals appear. There are also some, let's see, the eighth step, filter by priority, add buttons or drop down to filter goals by priority in the index view. If we would do this, actually we would need then to also change the index action method here, which is not included in this response from ChatGPT. But let's start from the top and just add this priority field and then display goals by their priorities. So let me just copy the code here, go to the goal model, which is the main model in our application. Let me just either input the enum on top or on the bottom here, and then add the, I don't know why the scroll bar is not working as it should. Let me just copy this property and store it in our goal model. I hope I'm not going so fast. If you have any questions, just make sure to leave them in the comments down below. So we have added this priority property. Now we're just gonna need to go to package manager console to add these changes to our database, to add the migration, which just represents our database schema, so that our goal model or our goal table in our database will also have this additional property. Let me just write here, add migration. You can give a name to this migration. I'm just going to give it here priority property added, just so that we know for what reason, what did we change when we added this migration. Build started. Okay, the build succeeded. This is the migration that will be added to our database. The migration is this class that represents our database schema, as I was saying. So this additional column will be added, this priority column will be added to our database, and we need to just write the command here, update database, so that this changes, this migration will be stored in our database. Okay, build succeeded. Let's go to ChatGPT here and see the next step is update the database, update the create and edit view pages. Okay, let me just copy this code here and paste it in the create and edit view page. Let's go here on the bottom before the submit button. Okay, let's just check if this is correct. So the ASP4 tag is connecting the label and the select tags to the priority model. We are taking here items from our enum that we created, the goal priority enum, which should appear in this select tag where we have different options. The options should be the enums, the enum values that we created. So this seems to be okay. Go to the edit page and do the same thing here before the submit button. If you have any questions during this or from the code you get from ChatGPT, you can simply ask it and it actually will give you a proper response in most cases. Let's go back here. The fourth step would be to display this priority in the index view page, and I'm taking the second code so that it changes actually the color of this paragraph tag depending on the kind of priority that our model has. As we can see here, it's using some bootstrap classes to do this. Let me copy the code, go to the index view page, and let's display this. I'm going to say below the header, let's say below the name. Let me remove this here, this text priority. And yeah, we'll check if this is working correctly in just a bit. Let's go to, I think, the fifth step. So that this works would be to, okay, so this is an error ChatGPT is giving us. This wouldn't work if we do not, I'm not seeing it here, if we do not change the way we're receiving the data in our edit and create post methods. So if I go to the controller, to the Firstly, to the HTTP post create action method, we need to include here from the data we are receiving, we need to include the new model, the new property, which is the priority. The priority property. I mean, you get most of the code correct in most cases from ChatGPT, but still, if you do not know how the whole project is structured, maybe sometimes you may get stuck and you do not know where to look for if something is not working. So in my opinion, ChatGPT and AI help us a lot. It fastens the process, but still doesn't substitute everything. The same thing in the edit HTTP post action method priority. So we are including this property when the form is being submitted. And let's go back to ChatGPT. The last step here, or the last step that we're including, we're not seeding the database. We are updating the index action method. So let me copy this. Our index action method is an asynchronous action method. So I'm just gonna need to modify this in our code. Let's go to the index action method just here. Okay, I'm pasting this code here. Let me just format it a bit better. Our context, I believe, is just named goal. Usually it's named in plural, but let me go to the context here. Yes, it's named goal here, so that's why that gave us an error. Let me go back to the controller. And since this is an asynchronous await method, we need the await keyword here before we are taking data from the database. And then we need to use the toList async method when we're listing this data. So let's see what we are doing here. We are, let me shift them. Let me move them a bit on the right. So we are looping through our context for all of the goals, and we are ordering by descending. So using the priority property, this is explained here, sorting by priority from high to medium to low. If we go back to our goal model where we created our enum, we have high, medium, and low. And high, as I told you, has the value of an integer of 0. Then it is medium has 1, 2, and so on. It sorts this from 0 to 2 to 1 to 2 in this descending order, so that in this way we have the goal with the highest priority on top and then the goal with the least priority on the bottom. We are listing this data then. And I think this was the last step. The other step was to seed the data, which we're not doing since we can create the data. On our view pages, testing it and optional enhancements. Let's run the app and see what we've created so far. Okay, they all have this high priority. Firstly, set up by default the enum in the null position, as it seems. Let me try here and edit one of the priorities. We can see here this starts from high, medium, and low. They've taken the first one by default since we didn't select any priority when these models were created. But let me just give this the medium priority, click on save. And we see that the color changed of the priority, but it's still in the first position. Let me change it to the second one, take it to low. Okay, we are sorting them differently, not in the correct order. If we leave it ordered by without specifying descending, as we can see here, this sorts the elements of a sequence in ascending order according to the key. So this will actually sort them from 0 to 1 to 2, which 0 was the priority in the 0 position, then medium was in the first position, low was in the second position. So this would be actually the way we would want to sort our goals. Let me run the app again. Just refresh this. Okay, so now the goal with the highest priority is in the first place, then the goal with a medium priority is in the second place, a goal with a low priority is in the third place, and we see the colors and the text here changing because of the way we presented our data. In our index view page, we can try and create another goal here. Let's say 100 daily push-ups. Target is to do this, let's say, for 30 days. We've done this for 10 days. Priority, let's make it a low priority. If we create this should go on the end of the page. Let me click on create. Okay, this goal now has this priority of low. It has a green color. It's on the end of the page. If we change the priority to high, this should actually appear here on top together with this goal that we had created before. In just a few minutes, we added a brand new feature to our project with most of the code generated for us.
Do you want to take the next step as a developer and improve your all-around skills but don't know where to focus? Maybe you haven't built a meaningful application yet because there are so many confusing steps along the way. Well, I have a course designed specifically for this purpose called ASP.NET Core MVC Blueprint. It provides guidance every step of the way to help you build a web application that solves a real-world problem. You'll start by learning the core MVC fundamentals and beginner concepts and progress to advanced topics like database integration, authentication, services, and deployment. As an added bonus, if you enroll now, you'll get my C# ebook for free, which will help you get the fundamentals right by providing all the C# insights you need in one place. I built this course to help you learn what you need to build the applications you want in a simpler way, saving you time and avoiding the need to piece information together from countless tutorials, articles, or books. If you're interested in enrolling in the course at the current limited time price and bonus, check the link in the description or visit payhip.com/codethefuture right now.
We'll build a blog web application, but the principles we'll cover can be applied to any project you have in mind. We'll use AI to handle the front end, taking care of much of the heavy lifting for us, especially if you're like me, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend and don't enjoy the front end part that much. Let's just open up Visual Studio and create an empty MVC project, and we'll go from there. Super simple, just go to create a new project here, search for an MVC template here on top, and we'll select the first option that should appear, which has C# as its language, not F#. Click on it, click on next. Let's just name this like blog app, whatever you want. I'll leave the location of the project as it is. Click on next. I'll leave the framework here to .NET 8. This is the latest version I have installed. Click on create and wait for Visual Studio to generate our project. Okay, now that we have our project, the first step is going to be to create our model class. This is the base of any project you make. No matter how big your full stack application is going to be, you usually start here. So just click on the models folder, click on add, and we are going to create a model class for our blog posts. So let's name this like post.cs. Click on add, and just for simplicity, I have already created this class. I have stored it here before with just a few properties for the ID, the title, the content of the post, and for the date when it was created. Let me just copy this, paste it right here, save it, and now the next step, I'm going to use this scaffolding option to create my controller with all of the CRUD action methods. If you haven't done this before, if you haven't created a full stack project before, I would highly recommend to watch my video when I go in depth and create each method myself. The link is on the card on the screen or below, but if you have already coded like a project similar to this, you can also as well just go here to the controllers, click on add controller, And instead of creating an empty controller, we can use this scaffolder that Visual Studio has so that all of the methods are generated for us. Just click on add and wait for Visual Studio to create our controller, but we have to select a few options here. So the first thing is going to be the model class, which is our post model class, and the DB context class. We can either create it ourselves, but I'm also gonna let this scaffolder generate it for us. Let's leave the name as it is. So the context basically connects our model to the database, and this is part of Entity Framework Core. Here below, I'll just leave the name of the controller as it is, click on add, and just wait a bit for Visual Studio, just a moment. Now, I don't know if this is smart or lazy, I think it's both, but you judge it yourself. Here we have our controller with all of our action methods for our CRUD operations. We have a views folder created as well. Here in the posts folder, we have all of our CRUD view pages. Now the next step is going to be, we have a data folder created with our context class here with a dbset instance for the post model that we created. So just to set up the project right now, we are going to need to create a database instance. So how we can do that? Just go to the view menu here, click on Server Explorer, and just above, click with the right of the mouse, create new SQL Server database. Let me just open SQL Server Management Studio here to get the server name so that we connect it with Visual Studio. So this is my server name. I'll copy this, connect here, and just go back to the project. Put the server name here. I'll set the encryption to false here and trust server certificate. Basically, this means we do not have to put a password to connect our project to the database. That's the short explanation. And let's give a name to our database here, like the name of the project was simple blog underline data or something like that. Click on OK. And here in the properties window here, we should have the details of our database that we just created. I'm gonna get the connection string, which just tells us the physical location of our database, and we store this in the app settings.json file. There should be already a default connection string. I'm just gonna remove this if I can. Just input the correct connection string here. Okay, our project just at this point is all set up. What we're gonna need to do is just add these migrations to our database. So we created the model, everything, the DB context with the dbset instance. We have the address of our database and the scaffolder actually as well. Just added the service here for the context in the program.cs class. So everything is set up. Just go to tools, to NuGet package manager console, and we're gonna add these changes, the migrations to the database. So just click on add dash migration, and let's write here what we did in this migration, like post model added. We could also just write their initial migration anyways. Hit on enter and wait for the migration to be added. So the migration is just like this database schema that represents how our database will look like. So a table is being created with these properties in our database for our post model. Now let's just update these changes to the database with this update dash database command. Hit on enter and everything should be set up for us. Everything's done. Let's run the project. Okay, let's just go to let me open Visual Studio again, go to the posts folder, and to the index view page, just click with the right of the mouse and click on view in browser, or you could just go to that specific URL here to go to the index view page. Everything is empty. Let's check if the CRUD operations are working as they should. Click on create new. Actually, we're gonna need to remove this part here so that we do not need to select the date ourselves, because each model, each post when it is created will get the current time. So just go to the create view page here and just remove this form group for the date. Just remove this here, run the project one more time, go to this exact page. Okay, so let's just select like a title for the blog. Let's just write this lorem ipsum, this generic thing. Let's write a text in it, like I'm just searching for some boilerplate text. Okay, just something small. Amazing. Okay. No points for creativity here, but anyways, just click on create. And the blog post should be created and it's inputted here in a table. This looks horrible, but we have the title, the content, the created date, the time when the blog post was created. All of these other options should be working correctly. The edit CRUD operation, the delete one. So now is the fun part. At this point, our application is working. The CRUD operations are working, and just by using AI in this case to just change the visual appearance of our index page and of our create page, this would actually look like a blog website, at least more than it does now. So let me just go to ChatGPT here. The more accurate that our input to ChatGPT is, the better the response is also going to be. So I'm just gonna focus on giving our model class, which is the base of our project, and we'll ask it to give us like a better way to present it in the index and in the create page, but also I will just prompt it to use only Bootstrap classes so that we do not need to handle the CSS classes, JavaScript classes. It could give us all kinds of things. Maybe it gives us Blazor or who knows, but this is how I'm going to ask it to give the simplest design that I believe actually we could get in this case. So I have just explained the kind of project that I have created and given it the post model class, and just ask ChatGPT to give me the index and details view page actually, so that the first page will have just the blogs, a bit about them, and then when we click like add more, we should be redirected to like another page that gives us the blog details. That's how blogs work. And also just specified here that we want to use only Bootstrap classes, make it that it looks like a blog. Just hit on enter, let's see what it gives us. Okay, we have the index view page. Let's try this. At first, I'm just gonna copy from this line here, since this doesn't like specify the correct address name of our project that is here above. So I'm just gonna copy this part here, paste it, and see how it looks like. Run our project without debugging. This is refreshing. Okay, so this is our blog post. We see the title here, we see a bit about what the blog has, and these 3 dots here, the date when it was posted, and the option to read more. Then just go and take the code for our details view page. Let me just copy this part and paste it in our details view page. Run the project again without debugging. Okay, let me just make a last refresh, click on read more. Okay, there is obviously a problem here. And the actual mistake is just right here. The second parameter here should write the name of our controller, which is posts in plural, not in singular. And yeah, AI is not perfect.
if you don't know what you're doing, this would be more confusing actually, but let me try so that I'm not talking nonsense. Let me write the program one more time. Let me just refresh the page here. Okay, our only blog post, if we click on read more, okay, we are redirected in another page, just the name of the blog, the date when it was posted, and the actually content of the blog. And we have the option here to go back. We could have multiple blog posts. I guess the URL that takes us back is also done falsely. If we go here to the details page, is like, yeah, we can go back. This second parameter should have the name of our controller. I don't know why AI did that wrong, but yeah, it's not perfect. You can go again to the posts index route here, click on read more, our blog post, go back here to the main page where should be listed all of our blog posts. As you can see, creating the initial structure or a simple version of whatever project you have in mind can be done in this much time. My recommendation is to pick a project you're passionate about, just start and see how far you can take it. Do you feel like there are different parts of your applications that need to be adjusted, but you keep avoiding them because there are just so many? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you some of the best and easiest ways to use AI to do a lot of the work for you and improve your .NET projects. We'll build an expensive web application and explore how we can incorporate AI at every step of the way. Just to clarify, I don't want to make you avoid work like I myself sometimes do, but after watching this video, the next time you sit down to code, you'll be able to focus more on the things you're best at. Well, let's get started. Okay, so let me start and go to Visual Studio and create an empty MVC project. Let's just create a new project here. Select an MVC template. Okay, the first one that we have here, click on next. I'll give a name to our project. We're gonna make an expenses app. So let's name it like that. Click on next. Let's select the .NET 9 version and leave everything else as they are. And just click on create the project so that Visual Studio creates our project. Okay, the project was generated for us and we're going to start and use AI since the first step, which is creating our model for our full stack project. I'm actually going to go to the models folder, add a new model, a new class of expenses, expense.cs. And we're actually going to use AI to add validation to our model. This way, validation is useful for us to restrict users on the data they input in our application. So we may want some fields in a form to be required. We would want them to be within some specific parameters. Let's say we do not want their name to be so long. Things of this nature are done by validation. Sometimes we just ignore this part, or when we're just building a project just to test things out, we do not do this, but it is a necessary step, and with AI we can actually do this very simply. So I'm just going to create firstly the model myself. I have already created this before just for simplicity. This is the expense model. Let me just paste it here. So we have an ID, a description for our expense model, an amount in decimal, and a date. And now I'm just going to get this model, put it to AI. So let me just go here, chatgpt.com, and ask ChatGPT to add some appropriate validation. So we're also specifying here the type of project we're doing, just so that the response is more accurate, and just paste the model here and wait for ChatGPT to give us the response.
Okay, so AI just generated the response, the data annotations here for us, added validation to our model. We can see that some of these fields are set to required. The description part here is required. We also see some error messages being inputted here so that when the user just doesn't input the correct data there, like description is required when they forgot to add the description, or here that description cannot exceed 100 characters, so the string length or the length of this property is set to 100 in this case for this second property. We can see here that a range is set for our amount property, and at the end, we have specified here the type of data this property takes. This is also set as required. As we can see here, if a user does not select this, they will get a validation error. We also have the explanation of each of these data annotations we set above here. If you want to read them, let me just copy this and paste it in our project. And that seems okay to me. So this is the first use case with AI, super simple, and I think it's necessary. You can also, of course, tweak things if you want. Let's say the range to be different, the error message, of course, you can tweak. You can just remove the required attribute if you do not want a specific property to be required. But this is also like a good way to put some default data validation attributes here. Now, the next use case of AI for our project will actually be to refactor methods. I'll just explain this to you in a bit, but firstly, I'm going to need to set up the database to create the controller so that our application is functional. If you're not interested about it, you can of course skip ahead, but I would recommend to stay along and see how we set up our database here and create the base of our full stack project. So the first step is going to be to go to controllers, click on add a controller, and I'm actually going to use this scaffolder to create all of our CRUD operations for us. If we just select MVC controller with views here using Entity Framework Core, click on add, we need to specify a few options. So the model class we'll use is the expense model. We have not created a DB context yet. DB context is part of Entity Framework Core that basically connects our models here with our database. And we can just click on this plus button and add one here. If we hadn't created this before, just leave the name of the controller here to expenses controller, click on add, and Visual Studio will basically just create our controllers with our CRUD operations. A view folder will also be added with all of our view pages. Okay, here we see that Visual Studio generated all of our main methods here in the controller. Also in the views folder, we have a new expenses view folder added with all of our view pages for our CRUD operations. The data folder with the DB context was also added automatically. We're also now just going to need to create a database and set this up, basically connect it to our project. So you can just go to view here and let me find it, Server Explorer. Click with the right of the mouse here on data connections, create new SQL Server database. Let me open SQL Server Management Studio in the meantime so that I find this server name here. Okay, let me just copy this server name here, click on connect, go back to Visual Studio, add it here, set the encryption to false here and trust the server certificate. This part, the encryption basically means we do not need to set up a password to connect to our database. And the database name, let's set it to expenses data, the name of our project, or expenses app data. Click on OK, and on the properties windows here on the right bottom corner should display the connection string, which is the physical location of the database that we just created. We store this at app-settings.json, so our project knows where the database for this project is located. This already has like a connection string in it, like a default one. Let me just remove this and paste the new connection string here. If we go to the program.cs, when we used the scaffolder to create our controller, the service for our context, connecting our project, our context with the database is already set up here. So we do not need to do anything else now other than adding these migrations, the changes to our database, and updating our database. So let me just go to tools here and click on NuGet Package Manager console on the right. And I'm just gonna write here, add migration. And I set a name to it like initial migration, or like the expenses model was added, so that we know for future reference why we added these migrations. So migrations are like this database schema that represent how our data is in our database. As we can see, this class was created here to create the table of expenses. Now just need to update these changes to our database. Hit on enter and everything should be set up. Okay, now that our project should be working correctly, we're going to go to the second use case of AI when building a project, or also when you are working on a project you already have, is actually refactoring methods or refactoring code. Sometimes maybe you see some other colleague or someone else do a code you don't really understand, or you think it's not as efficient as it should be, or in case you maybe have written like a method on your own but aren't really sure what you are doing there or if that's the right approach. In this case, we are going to use AI to tell us if our code can be refactored or improved. Let me copy like a method I was writing before, which is actually not so efficient here. I'm just gonna copy this. It's just a method that will filter specific expenses from my database. Let's say expenses where what I have written here, expenses that contain a specific description. For example, we can make like a view page to search for specific expenses, and we're filtering this data in our database. So let me just paste the method here. Okay, we are accessing our model in our database by just underline context.expense, not expenses. This should work right now. And I'm just taking this code one more time, adding it to AI, telling us what can we do to refactor it or to make it better. So we're also asking AI to explain to us the differences of the new improved method, basically, that we may get from ChatGPT. Okay, so this is the refactored method AI has given us. The first thing is that it checks actually if we are receiving like an empty value from our method, so that we do not need to query database if we have nothing to query it for. And the second thing is, as we can see here, we filter the data we need directly when we query the database. And we do not receive all of the data and then we filter then what we need from it. This is not efficient, and it also affects the performance of our application. Down below we can also like see the explanation of these changes if you want to read it more in depth. Null value check in the beginning, link query optimization, what I said, that moved the filtering logic into the database query using query directly on the context, and we are avoiding fetching all of the expenses. So this is like a refactored method, improves efficiency and performance of our application. Let me just copy this and paste it to our project. Now let's move on to the third use case for AI. When we refactor a method like this, or even if you're just a beginner and do not really understand all of these CRUD operations above, you can actually take this method and ask AI to write comments explaining its functionality. So let me just ask AI here, can you add comments to this method, link the functionality, and just paste the method there. Okay, we're seeing that some comments are generated for us, checking if the provided keyword is null, empty, or contains only white space. This is the meaning of this method actually. If so, return an empty list to the view to prevent unnecessary database queries. Okay, this is a bit long, but you can just take any part of it you want. You can just keep the parts that you think would be useful to you. Now we have arrived to the fourth reason we can use AI for, which is designing our front end. This is actually my favorite part. It's just not my thing, designing. I just spend too much time on it and I don't really enjoy it, to be honest. But since ChatGPT came around, I actually use it quite a lot. Let me just run the project here. Firstly, just create a simple expense and actually check if the application is working. And then I'm going to show you how you can use AI for this specific purpose. Okay, let's go to the name of the controller, expenses dash create, so that we create something first, an expense. The description is like grocery haul or something, I don't know. Just input an amount here, the date. For example, you may note we may register like expenses you did in the past few days, in the past month or something like that. Click on create and we will should be redirected to the index page. We have just like a simple table here. It can be actually a lot more professional if we just use AI, and this is pretty simple. We can do this for any of our view pages. I'm just gonna do it firstly for our index view page, which is the main one. Let me just prompt AI here, just ask what we wanted to do, give the whole index page there and just wait for the response. Okay, let's see what AI has given us. In this case, the index view page seems to be changed. Let me just copy the code as it is, paste it in our view page and actually run the project to see the changes. Okay, let's just go again to the expenses route here. Okay, now as you can see, the UI is more appealing, visually a lot better and actually more professional, and we didn't really do much work. You can do this for all of the pages that you have here. We didn't change the other pages.
If you got value from this video, YouTube thinks you should watch the video appearing now on the screen. So go ahead and click on it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.